Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Happy Monday, Dr. Paul. How are you today?
Good. Same to you.
Good. Thank you.
Happy week. Happy
Yes.
month. But we have to deal with the news. But this week, you could pick and choose. If you want to pick a good thing, you say, oh, peace in our time. Things are happening very good. And it looks like at least they quit shooting for an hour, supposedly. And maybe there will be a little bit better conditions in the Middle East. And yet, at the same time, there's a war stirring up and there's a war going on. They say, oh, that's just a trade war. That doesn't mean anything. Yes, Trump and China are fussing a bit, but it looks like it'll be contained. It'll be all right. But we want to discuss this whole thing, that this ceasefire that has been declared, very, very good. It's a step in the right direction, at least. And the bombs have quit. Now, all they have to do is to really solidify this peace is that the American people should tell their congressmen, don't send any more money over there, because that's what they need, whether it's in Ukraine or the Middle East. If they didn't have the people's money, American taxpayers, that we wouldn't have to be dealing with this, and we'd all be better off, and our country would be richer and our dollar would be stronger. But there was an announcement on Zero Hedge today, and there was a lot of ups and downs. You know, at first, when the peace treaty was announced, Trump proclaimed the end of, quote, age of terror and death, close quote. But after Hamas releases all remaining hostages, so there's a little ifs there. And there was a tremendous boost to the markets. Stocks certainly went up on the superficial aspect of this. The stock market is up near 600 points. Gold is up significantly. And some people would say that's a warning. And I would say they're right who say that. But also silver is up as well. And this is telling us one important thing. This is telling us something about the dollar. Yes, that people want to get rid of paper dollars and buy stuff, and sometimes they cause bubbles. And I suspect that in the stock market and other markets like this, it's a forming of involving in a bubble because we have so many dollars. So I think when we read these numbers, whether it's gold price or silver prices or whatever, what we're talking about is what's it doing to the dollar. And if you follow the dollar closely, it's not doing a lot of good. The purchasing power of the dollar is going down, and that's what counts for the American people, and they don't quite put it all together. But it was exciting to see what would happen. This is not a treaty, but this move on, and maybe a move in the right direction. But, you know, Daniel, I had one bit of hesitancy about this because I was refreshing my history about what happened back in 1938. And that was when there was a Munich agreement, and Chambers, Neville Chamberlain was the British leader who went there and had an agreement, and they made this agreement, and he was euphoric. He came back and talked about in the parliament and said, peace in our time, and it's a well-known statement. And within a short period of time, Hitler didn't pay any attention to it, invaded Poland, and the British in their negotiations, sort of donated Czechoslovakia to Hitler. So that's a bigger and different story. But my point is I think I always, for my personal reasons, I'm always cautious about saying, I just did this and this is magic and it's going to be all right. I'd rather underpredict and do better than I really think is going to happen. But anyway, it was exciting. It continues to be exciting. The stocks went way up, and then the trade war got involved, and there were messages changed there, and the stock market went down sharply. And again, today, there was an announcement by the president, and the stocks are up nearly like 600 points. I would think if the people who are in these mid to minutes, seconds to seconds, making decisions, and how they operate, not with a couple $1 million or $1 billion, sometimes a lot more money, hundreds of billions of dollars. And sometimes they're always long or short. They have better nerves than I would have to see that. But anyway, that's what's going on. But I think this is typical. It's understandable when you have an economy run by a monetary system, a financial system based on debt and a fiat currency. Under those circumstances, you don't have stability. You don't have reasonable growth, steady growth, and an ability to handle and take care of the debt. If we have a system that encourages debt and encourages fiat money, and it's good while it lasts. It's like taking a drug, but eventually things come to a climactic end. And I think that's what we're witnessing here is part of that climactic end. And this was a climactic weekend, and I hope for the best for those who are more optimistic than I am.
Well, the devil is always in the details, isn't it? And I think you used the right term, ceasefire, and I think people would take issue with you for using that term because President Trump certainly doesn't want to use that word. He wants to use peace plan. It's, as you say, peace in our time, or as we can say, if you put that first one on, the age of terror and death is over. That doesn't make a lot of sense. If you put that first one up, you can see this is how Hedge put it up. But this is the first phase of a very complicated peace agreement. Now, this peace agreement is not new. Something very similar was launched when President Trump first came into power. And if you remember, Dr. Paul, there were several weeks of a ceasefire that went into place. And then just before phase 2 was to kick in, the Israelis decided that they didn't like it and they started bombing again. And that's where we are. So we can see this pattern of this being broken. Now, the first part, the easy part, is the release of the hostages. And on both sides, really, because the Palestinian hostages have been released from Israeli prisons, to which we would say that is a great thing. It is a good thing that the Israelis that have been held for 2 years can go back to their families, who I'm sure were worried, sick, nonstop over them. And now the same is true with the Palestinians who've been released. That is the best news, and it's very good news. But the problem is, again, where do you go from here? And Trump really isn't very interested in details. We know that, even though the devil is in the details. He doesn't like details. And so the hard part comes. The hostages are released now, probably of limited utility at that point to Hamas anyway. So what comes next? Well, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. Trump, I don't think, wants to deal with that. And that is the problem because we've been here, we've seen the movie before, and it doesn't end well for the Palestinians. So put on that next one, though. Here's more from the article. On this historic day, Hamas released all remaining Israeli hostages following 2 years of war. 20 in total have been released, with initial 7 handed over the first wave, followed by 13 more. 28 additional deceased captives are expected to be returned, though there are reports that only 4 of the deceased have been transferred back. In return, 250 Palestinian prisoners serving long and life sentences are now being released from Israeli prisons as part of the first phase of the brokered deal. So good news, first phase. We can be cautiously optimistic, but we have to be informed by recent history, and unfortunately that doesn't bode well.
Trump is pretty good at having victory laps.
Yeah, he's very good at it.
And I think he's there right now. Where is he speaking in the
Knesset?
Knesset right now. And he won't mince words when it comes to finding out who really accomplished all of this. But anyway, all we can do is observe and make our comments because I think everybody knows our position. And it's a long way. It's quite a bit different than what we've had for a long, long time. But we've been talking about this, and others have been talking about this. It goes all the way back to the founders, what kind of foreign policy we have. And you talk about this advice of not being involved in entangling alliances. When I think of these entangling alliances, I mean, we're involved in many entangling alliances, and we're involved in a lot of wars, and sometimes we stir up wars. But what we do is we have the trade wars that are doing this. The wars are stirred up, and it doesn't ever come to a conclusion. And I think this is one of the reasons why so many people feel at a loss and a misunderstanding, and then emotions go. But we've sort of been following rather closely, the ups and downs about the people who have been supporting this war, and maybe indirectly the support coming from people that generally, were willing to accept anything they was said by Israel, in spite of the fact that it was our money, that the numbers of people who are objecting to it for various reasons are growing, and maybe that was part of the reasons why they had to at least give something token. And even if this is turns out to be token, at least people are going to see what could be done if people were more reasonable. There certainly could be a wise second choice. Maybe no more shooting for 5 years or something like that. Not likely to come, though.
And I think it's actually good news that Trump went to Israel to speak at the Knesset. Normally, I think it's pretty hokey and goofy to speak in other people's parliaments and what have you. But I think it's a good deal because what I think it represents is the fact that Trump has really bought into this. He's dedicated to this. He wants this to be something. So I think he's going to follow it more closely. There's a slightly better chance than if he had just stayed home. And let's be honest, Trump needs a win. He's fumbled and stumbled on the Ukraine-Russia war because he's misunderstood everything about it. All of these goofy little I solved 7 wars in 3 months or something, that's kind of worn thin. It sounds dumb, and he says it every time he opens his mouth, and people don't believe him. His own Republicans have turned against him on Israel. They no longer support Israel. We've talked about these polls over and over again. So, and his numbers are down. So he needs a win, and I think that's why he's invested in this and has gone over there. So hopefully that means that he's going to keep an eye on it. But I've got a couple of clips to play from his talk at the Knesset. Now, this first one is interesting because he talks about how we gave Israel all of our best weapons. I don't know that if this one is the win that he thinks it is. If you cue up that first video, and I think we want to play the whole video here. Here he is addressing the Israeli parliament, the Knesset. Let's go ahead.
We have to do what we have to do. We make the best weapons in the world, and we've got a lot of them. And we've given a lot to Israel, frankly. And I mean, Bibi would call me so many times, can you get me this weapon, that weapon, that weapon? Some of them I never heard of, Bibi, and I made them. But we'd get them here, wouldn't we? And they are the best. They are the best. But you used them well. It also takes people that know how to use them. And you obviously used them very well.
Okay, you can cut that off
so
now.
Many
that was interesting. He said, Bibi would call me all the time and asked me for these weapons. I didn't even know what they were, but I gave them to him. And then he said something interesting, but you use them well. To that, I just brought this up because we've talked about this on the show. Go to that next JPEG. You've used them well, Bibi, these weapons. Now here's from The Guardian. We've had this on the show before. Revealed, Israel military's own data indicates civilian death rate of 83% in Gaza war. I don't think most people would say that killing 83% total are citizens in a war is using those weapons well.
But the other thing is, it's such a clear point of our participation in this.
Yeah.
I mean, the money we roll over and say, well, we need new weapons, make them fail. Oh, good. And they use them well. So I think we're so responsible for this because it would not happen, or it would happen in a different manner, that if we weren't pouring the weapons in there. And that point you make there is just a crucial point, because this whole thing about civilians, they really don't count. It's amazing that these numbers can still come out.
Yeah.
And there's a few people out there collecting information, but it doesn't seem to make it to the headlines. Or if you take this position, and there has been just as much applause, maybe, in the U.S. Congress
Yeah.
that they gave on the Knesset,
Yeah.
of all the weapons we've sent over there.
Fest.
And the people can't see if they're having a problem financially and paying their bills and relatives being killed and this sort of thing. It just makes no sense whatsoever for us to be involved, and yet they couch it in moral terms.
Yeah.
And
You used them well.
unfortunately, quite frequently in religious terms.
Yeah,
And
a lot
if
of
you
that.
don't do it, you're really not a believer.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple more video clips that are good, I think. Next one is a little weird. Here is Netanyahu basically interfering in Israeli internal affairs. This one is a weird one, if you ask me. I think we got 35 seconds of that second video clip. Is that the second one? Yeah. Yeah, it should be. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. 35 seconds of this.
The good men right here. These two men are good men right here. Hey, I have an idea. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon? Give him a pardon. Come on.
That's enough of that one. So here's Trump in the middle of their own parliament telling the Israeli president to give Netanyahu a pardon. I mean, that's just bizarre, isn't it? He's a good man. Give him a pardon. The next one now is Miriam Adelson. This is Trump. I think he thought this was a win, but I'm not sure this was a win. You might want to put him in one more. I've got two more audio clips now. Here he is talking about Miriam Adelson here.
But I actually asked her, I'm going to get her in trouble with this, but I actually asked her once, I said, so Miriam, I know you love Israel. What do you love more, the United States or Israel? She refused to answer. That might mean Israel, I must say.
Now that used to be
But I
considered
actually
an
asked her, I'm gonna get her in
anti-Semitic
trouble.
stereotype to say that. I thought that was bizarre. Now, the other thing now is expectation, and that's important on this. Now, I think Trump genuinely believes that he's achieved a peace. He said it before. Now, this last one is just an audio clip, but it's him being questioned, I think, when he was on Air Force One getting ready to go to Israel. Put that final one up. It's very short, but it's important to listen to it, I think.
Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, has not gone so far as to say the war is over. In your view, is the war between Israel and Hamas over?
The war is over. The war is over, okay? You understand that?
That's interesting. The war is over. Do you understand that? The war is over.
So should we relax?
I don't know. I
Well,
hope
you
he's
know
right.
what? That's an excuse for us not sending so many weapons and money.
I hope he's right. I mean, if that's the case, then he's going to have to tell Netanyahu to stop bombing and to, mind his P's and Q's. The thing that worries me about this, Dr. Paul, is that Israel's own president, now put that next JPEG up, their own president, let me read this when you get it up there. I know I got you running around. Journalist Owen Jones says, this is Israel's defense minister declaring that Israel will resume its military onslaught against Gaza once the Israeli hostages are returned. Defense Minister Israel Katz said, Israel's great challenge after the phase of returning the hostages will be the destruction of all Hamas's terror tunnels in Gaza directly by the IDF and to the international mechanisms to establish under the leadership and supervision of the U.S. This is the primary significance of implementing the agreed upon principle of demilitarizing and neutralizing Hamas and its weapons. I have instructed the IDF to prepare for carrying out this mission. So he's clearly ready to go back to bombing Gaza. So the question to Trump will be, what now?
But it's such a contradiction.
Yeah.
Trump says one thing and they're talking about another, and that goes along with my warning or explanation of what happened leading up to World War I.
Yeah.
It sounded good, and they said it, and there were speeches made, and it's a reflection of human nature and trust and morality. And so much of this stuff is so artificial. It's just a total rejection of natural law. They don't even pay attention to it. They don't believe in it. And yet, to me, I think is one of the most fundamental things of human society is understanding to succeed, to survive. You don't kill people and lie to people, and yet here it is, two guys running two countries and they're not even close.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the war's over. Except we can. Oh, that's okay, Mr. President. That's okay. The war's over, but this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I think we talked a little bit earlier that we sort of suspect that Chamberlain was maligned because he probably genuinely meant well, and probably the same is true with Trump. But let's move on to the second one, because it was also a weird and wacky weekend about China, as Trump would say. I emphasize it. Put this next on. This is just an indication of what happened. When Trump threw a fit, Dr. Paul, Trump announces new 100% tariff on Chinese imports after stock market sell-off. This is Trump. If you go to the next one, it has just been learned that China has taken an extraordinarily aggressive position on trade in sending an extremely hostile letter to the world, stating they were going to, effective November 1st, impose large-scale export controls on virtually every product they make, and some not even made by them, Trump said. He called it unprecedented and a moral disgrace and slapped some big old tariffs on them.
I think there's a good news story here, because the people in the markets, I think, I belittle, the concept of democracy. Majorities rule, dictatorship of the majority, and the 49% minority have no rights whatsoever because the majority does. That's what pure democracy is all about. But here they're saying that they can't do this at all. But I just think that's wonderful that the market sent the message, and it was spontaneous, and they were voting. And a lot of people, and I think Austrian economics talks about this, is that's where they vote. Every penny is spent is a vote. And if it's in a free market, it tells you something, where they are, and it can send signals, like interest rates send signals. But what the consumer does, and a good entrepreneur knows how to anticipate it, but they also know how to react. So in a way, Trump has those features probably in business more so than in politics, because this is an answer. Because, no, I'd have to say he did shift his position. He had to modify that. The market was speaking out, so he responded to that. So that type of democracy, I think, is fine. The way that people spend their money, and that's why wage and price controls are so evil, because it eliminates that, and you eliminate the function of the market rate of interest, and you get a messed up economy.
Yeah.
And that's what we have.
One of the things you mentioned before the show was how disturbing it is that one person, though, has this much power to move the markets with just a statement.
Yeah, and that's not a normal market. I mean, sometimes that would happen in a free market, people who would make a statement. I mean, all that would be valuable, but there's so much significance involved today, on a war issue or on interest rates. So that's a little more complicated. But in a free market, those statements, you'd respect the economists that said the market is probably going to do this and interest rates are going to go down. But most of the time, it's just marginal, But with this, just think of this shift. I wonder how many dollars were dumped and how many were recovered today.
Yeah.
Billions and billions of dollars. So that's not a smooth market operation.
That tariff he has, he uses it like a nuclear weapon, when he wants to. It's weird. Well, the crypto world went crazy over the weekend, too. If you skip to that Trump's 100% tariff, I skipped one to go to the next one. Crypto went nuts. Trump's 100% tariff threat on China leads to over $19 billion in crypto liquidations. Big money lost. But not everybody lost, Dr. Paul. Go to the next one. This is a crazy story. Crypto trader bags $160 million by shorting ahead of Trump's China tariff. Now go to the next one. This is a little bit more about it. In case you didn't know, the Bitcoin whale closed 90% of his Bitcoin short and fully closed his Ethereum short, making around $190 to $200 million profit in just one day on Hyperliquid. The crazy part, is that he shorted another 9 figs worth of Bitcoin and Ethereum minutes before the cascade happened, and that was just publicly on Hyperliquid. Imagine what he did elsewhere. I want to know this guy. Who is this guy? I hope it's not Barron Trump, but somebody, unless they are the most lucky person on earth, someone must have gotten a whiff that Trump was about to blow his stack.
Well, maybe this is an example of a market decision in spite of all the mess we have, because this individual was looking at it this way, and he had at least, we have the existence of them buying and selling these instruments, trying to prove maybe the system is sort of rigged, and it is rigged when you look at the Federal Reserve, but even that is affected by markets, what people do, and they prepare. Sometimes the Fed has to respond to these efforts. But it is really interesting that the changes can occur pretty fast, and even under these circumstances, I don't know what it takes. It takes a lot of money that you can risk it.
Ooh, wow!
And you have to have nerves of steel.
I bet. Well, I would just say to that whale that there are a lot of charities. Some of them are very close to us right now that you might want to share that wealth a little bit. We would definitely appreciate a couple of those coins. But as you said, Dr. Paul, now go to the last one. This is what happened after crypto flipped out, the stocks flipped out, gold and silver. Trump just changed his mind. Futures jump after Trump softens China rhetoric. Gold and silver soar. U.S. markets closed last week to the largest one-day loss in 6 months, with Asian overnight futures pointed to a sharp downdraft on Monday. So they were looking forward to a Black Monday, Dr. Paul. But on Sunday, Trump walked back some of his Friday comments, stating that, quote, November 1st, which is when they were going to take place, is an eternity, and expressing optimism that, quote, they'll be fine with China. So
he flips it around, but this might be. I never read his book about the art of the art of what the trade,
the deal, yeah.
And maybe this is part of his plan.
Just keep them guessing.
But he'll flip. Well, I think he realizes he has to. He has a good sense of when he had to do this, because I don't think he has this firm philosophy of free markets or sound money or that sort of thing. So he sees himself entitled to this, but you give him the benefit of the doubt. He's doing this sincerely. That he's intelligent, he's rich, and he'd like to help other people. But I don't. I'm not smart enough to make a good decision on that one.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to close out, and thanks everyone for tuning in on this Monday. Lots happening, lots going on. We appreciate you letting us bring you our or Ron Paul's take on things. And we'll hope you come back and see us again. Dr. Paul, over to you.
Very good. I want to thank all our viewers today for tuning in, because it was an exciting weekend, but I think it's just the beginning of different problems, because I don't think the problems have been solved. We have to give credit and the benefit of the doubt that Trump is serious about trying to bring peace and get credit for peace, and we hope it works and move in that right direction. But history, and I went far back as 1938, where the same type of negotiation we're going to have peace in our time, and it is going to be harrowing and difficult for a lot of people, because I think fundamentally you have to get back to a point of what the founders talked about: the principles of liberty, the principles of individual sovereignty, the principle of non-intervention in foreign policy, the principle of non-intervention in personal lifestyle, on and on, that we ignore, and actually getting worse, because right now there has been a systemic attack on our First Amendment for expressing ourselves. And that to me is very, very important, even though I'm going to stick with my predictions that there's a lot of people out there that agree with the principles of liberty, and I am maybe biased by the fact that I talked to thousands, maybe 100,000 people, I don't know, that from colleges as and being construed as liberal college campuses, that they understood the message of liberty, and I believe that message can be sold to anybody with any decency in themselves, because that to me is the road to peace and prosperity. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.